Ruben Amorim is the new manager of Manchester United. Extremely exciting times if you're a Manchester United fan like me. Today I'm going to be looking at some of the potential signings we could well see from him. I asked for your suggestions on Twitter. I've got some of the best ones in front of me here. Particularly interesting attacking midfield targets and striking targets. But we'll go through one by one, position by position, and I'll pick the player I think is best suited to this Amorim Manchester United system from your suggestions. Now, as you can see, I've tried to keep the suggestions relatively realistic. Some of the suggestions in there, madness. Right wing back was a position I wanted to talk about because obviously Diogo Dalot looks like he's going to play there. Mazraoui can also play there. He's operated, of course, at Ajax in a wing back role at times. I feel personally like Dalot is better suited to a wing back role, but still there are question marks over both of those in that role. So let's have a little look at some potential alternatives. First and foremost, let's talk about Jeremy Frimpong, because there is a conception, and I think this is the reason he's probably been raised as a suggestion, that he has a €40 million buyout clause in his contract. Now, we know that for sure. Last summer, he was available, I think, the whole of June for €40 million. Nobody moved for him. Whether or not that release clause is still active this summer, I'm unconvinced about. Whether it is or whether it isn't, Jeremy Frimpong is an exceptional right wing back. We know what he offers in terms of attacking output. These numbers are freakish. We saw it last campaign, the campaign before that really at Leverkusen. I think he's put up 15 goal involvements, 16 goal involvements in consecutive seasons. And this really comes back to poor planning, doesn't it? If Manchester United had moved for Amorim in the summer, post-FA Cup final, they made the decision they were going to go for him. They were going to play this three at the back system with a wing back. Frimpong was available at €40 million. Would they have gone for Frimpong instead of spending 20 million on Mazraoui? I can see that argument, to be honest with you. But nevertheless, that didn't happen. So we have to pretend and come at this from a clean slate. And the clean slate really involves Manchester United's budget. It's not going to be big next summer. It's going to be even smaller now they've had to pay €11 million to get Ruben Amorim to come in, £15 million to exit Erik ten Hag. That takes a big chunk out of the PSR calculations. It really does. It's simply unrealistic, as is Denzel Dumfries. Again, I think he was being suggested because he was thought to be out of contract this coming summer, but he's since signed a contract extension taking him all the way to 2028 when he will be 31 years old. Again, Denzel Dumfries feels like a really nice fit. He's a very well-rounded wing-back. He's been linked to Manchester United for a number of seasons now. He operates really well in attacking areas, puts up huge goal threats, but it feels like it's too late. The boat's kind of passed here. I'm not convinced Manchester United will sign or need to sign a right wing back. I'm fine with Mazraoui being a backup to Dalot, pushing him all the way in that right wing back role. For me, both of these players, Frimpong and Dumfries, I don't think you need. So let's go to centre-back, where I think there probably is more of a need. You look at Manchester United's centre-back roster, it runs quite deep. Evans, Lindelof, Maguire, though, are all out of contract this coming summer. Maguire does have the optional extra year, but it wouldn't be a surprise to me to see all of them let go. And if that happens, United's centre-back lineup looks extremely thin, doesn't it? Maguire is going to have some sort of remontada under Amorim. I can just feel it in my bones. I don't think it's going to happen for Lindelof. I would be surprised if Johnny Evans stays around. So what option is the best option? Well, the suggestions came from a mix of Sporting players that he's worked with before, Amorim, and Premier League players that have been linked heavily with Manchester United in the past. Take Jared Branthwaite, for instance, who looks like on paper to be the ideal fit for a left-sided centre-back role. We've seen him utilised in a back three and a back four. Obviously at PSV in a back three at times. Everton, exceptional last season in a back four. At the England youth levels in a back four. He's very comfortable on the ball. He's extremely athletic. But is he going to be the kind of player who wants to step into that midfield role? We know how Amorim likes to split his centre-backs, drop his goalkeeper into a third centre-back role, add a centre-back to the midfield. Often that is Inacio. Is Branthwaite going to want to do that? Is he then going to be a central centre-back option? I think there's an interesting narrative there. Either way, his contract's up in 2027. This is not going to be an easy deal to get done. United couldn't get it done in the summer. Everton wanted over £70 million. He hasn't started the season particularly well because of injury. He's only started one Premier League game. That fee is not going to have dropped loads. Might have dropped £10 million. He might have to force his way out, but either way, it's a big amount of money, which might well open the door for someone like Gonçalo Inacio, who is 2 years older than Jared Branthwaite. He's still just 23 years old, though, and has worked with Ruben Amorim in this left-sided central defensive role. Of course, stepping into midfield at times, hence why his numbers absolutely pop. He really carries the ball well, passes the ball well, and progresses the game. And the biggest bonus for Inacio is that he has a €60 million release clause, so he's likely to be cheaper than Jared Branthwaite in that role and experienced alongside Ruben Amorim. However, you then start to develop the issue, maybe it's the Ten Hag narrative playing in my mind here, of signing players from former clubs. And that was Eric's focus, wasn't it? Taking Ajax players, taking players he'd worked with in the past, bringing them to the club and hoping they would translate. Often that failed. Would that be the same with Inacio and Ruben Amorim? Diamande, I think, is pretty unrealistic at just 20 years old. He only joined the club from Midtjylland in 2023. Absolutely amazing output, so physical, a warrior at the heart of the defence at just 20 years old. But I think he's got a €90 million release clause. United aren't paying €90 million for a 20-year-old centre-back the summer after spending £50 to £60 million on Lenny Yoro 18. So what about Mark Guehi, who I think is a really interesting option? He's played as a left-sided centre-back, as a right-sided centre-back, in about 3 for Crystal Palace, under Glasner in about 4 for England at the Euros. At the Euros, Mark Guehi really blew me away. I thought he was maybe England's best player. I've met him and he is an absolute leader around the dressing room. He's clearly the guy everybody goes to at Crystal Palace when they need anything, and I think that is a factor for United. More leaders in the dressing room are needed, and Guehi is definitely that. He also has a contract up in 2026, which I think makes him a very intriguing option. For me, like, Branthwaite is the standout player here. So I'm gonna say Jared Branthwaite, but if his fee is too high and he is unavailable, I would potentially go Mark Guehi. I just think he is a really underrated player who started the season poorly, yes. I don't think he had enough of a break post-Euros, but there is definitely something there. I really believe that. There's a reason Liverpool was so keen on bringing him to the club in the summer, that Newcastle was so keen on bringing him to the club in the summer. Okay, at left wing back, again, a really interesting position this for Ruben Amorim, because clearly United have massive issues in this role. Luke Shaw's there, Terrell Malacia's there, both under long-term contracts. There is an argument to be made that could Luke Shaw offer a left-sided centre-back role? We have seen that in the past. He was pretty effective, actually, for Erik ten Hag when he was having to play there. It would also mean there's a lot less output on his body physically. The physical demands of being up and down in that wing-back role or that left-back role wouldn't exist. I kind of like Luke Shaw as a left-sided centre-back. Very good on the ball, progresses it really nicely. In that Amorim system, I could see it working. Either way, it leaves a hole at left wing-back, doesn't it? And it has to be a starter, really, for me. Alphonso Davies' name has been linked heavily. Concrete interest, according to Florian Plettenberg over in Germany. And we all know Alphonso Davies would bring to the side extreme physicality. He's an amazing ball progressor, an amazing dribbler. And that's been playing as a left-back, really, most of the time at Bayern Munich. As a left wing-back, I feel like it would really free him up to get involved in those attacking areas and be dynamic. As you can see, he's operating at nearly 5 progressive carries, over 2.5 successful take-ons. Really impressive numbers. And he's still just 23 years old. The biggest benefit for Alphonso Davies is he's available on a free. He's out of contract in the summer. But let's be realistic for a second. I see little to no chance Alphonso Davies picks Manchester United. If he's available on a free, Real Madrid are calling. I know Ferland Mendy has just signed the new contract, but there are clubs in better positions in Europe right now than Manchester United. So what about Alvaro Fernandez, who of course left Manchester United in the summer? They sold him for £5 million. Again, I come back to planning about getting Ruben Amorim in early. Would they have kept Alvaro Fernandez? Quite possibly, but at least they did insert a £16 million buyback. So not a huge fee to bring back a player that is very high level, a left wing back who, the Championship won Preston's Young Player of the Year award, still just 21 years of age. He's put up the second most minutes of any player in the Benfica squad. We know how good he is going forward. Could you bring him back? Well, for me, I think this is a very viable option. He's a really well-rounded profile. When you watched him in the United youth ranks, I think he won the Reserve Team Player of the Year, and I remember watching some of the youth games then. He's so fast on the outside. Loves to get to the byline, really good delivery, but also works like a dog going backwards. I was personally surprised when Erik ten Hag sanctioned his sale, given the issues he'd had with Malacia and Luke Shaw. But that's happened now. So could United think, opportunity here. He is more of a left wing back than a left back, more of a wing back as we've seen at Benfica. this could really work for us. There are also heavy links and loads of suggestions about Ruben Ait-Nouri. Of course, he is at Wolves. He's under contract until 2026, so he might be slightly more gettable. Also, we've seen Wolves do business in recent seasons, recent summers. They sell their best players consistently. And there's no doubt Ruben Ait-Nouri is one of their best players in that role. I don't think he's suited Gary O'Neill's forward at the back system. I think he's better as a left wing back, and his stats this season have been really impressive. I think he's got 5 goal involvements. He's in the top 10% of European fullbacks for shot creating actions, for XG, for expected assists, an amazing dribbler. He's still just 23 years old as well. So for me, I really like this suggestion. The final name we've got down here then is that of Anthony Robinson of Fulham. Now, he was linked to Manchester United in the summer. Much more of a left back. He's a better defender than he is attacker. Whenever I watch Anthony Robinson, his physical ability stands out. To me, he's put up huge tackle and interception numbers last season behind João Palhinha. I think the highest numbers in the Premier League. He's very, very solid off the ball. On the ball, in a wing-back role, would I want Robinson on the outside, getting involved in attacks and looking to switch play like Amorim wants his fullbacks to do? I'm not so sure. He'll be 28 by the time next summer rolls round. I don't see United being able to get him in January. For me, it's between Alvaro Fernandez and Ruben Ait-Nouri. I'm going to say Ruben Ait-Nouri. You know, Alvaro Fernandez, the buyback clause is there. It's still there, even if Ruben Ait-Nouri didn't quite work out. But let's say he's gettable at £30 million. You know, Manchester City were extremely interested in him, weren't they, because of that on-the-ball ability. And you have got Harry Amas coming through at 17 years old, so you don't want to block his development totally. I really like it, Ruben Ait-Nouri. Whenever I watch him play, he gets me out of my seat. And that is what I want from a Manchester United player. Into the middle of the park, and some big suggestions in here. First up, Carlos Baleba, who is having a remarkable season at Brighton, just running all over people, frankly, physically dominating teams, amazing footwork, really good off the ball. He is going to be Brighton's next superstar sale, and he's still just 20 years old. Oh, such a scary thought. He is going to be a superstar. Carlos Baleba, seriously, what a talented player. But he's under contract until 2029. He's 20 years old. Brighton do business at extremely high values. Like, United are not getting Carlos Baleba out of there for anything less than like 60, 70 million pounds, which is just unrealistic. It's not going to happen with these PSR calculations. The next suggestion, another 20-year-old, Adam Wharton. You know, a similar situation for me. He's under contract until 2029. He's 20 years old. You know, Palace only signed him last season for 22, 23 million pounds. Yes, he's amazing on the ball. He would partner Kobbie Mainoo really nicely, and I think there is an argument for that being the role United need. Because under Ruben Amorim, you look at the midfield composition, you've got Kobbie Mainoo, you've got Ugarte, who's going to play a lot of minutes, and you've got Casemiro, who I actually think could have a little bit of a sneaky remontada under the Portuguese. But he is not getting any younger. I think depth is an issue. Collier is going to want minutes. He's going to have minutes, I think, in cup competitions, but you've got to have more depth than those 4. And you've got to focus on a player that is really solid in the first phase of build-up, because none of those guys are that. None of those guys want to take the ball off the centre-back, turn, progress it really nicely through passing. Most of them are either carry monsters or duel monsters. Wharton is a progressive passer, but he's going to be £80 million plus. Palace are not going to free up Adam Wharton for a cut price deal anytime soon. So does that open the door to Angel Gomez, ex-Manchester United, of course? Excellent on the ball, and the one thing we know about him from his time in France and recently in an England shirt, he wants to take the ball off the centre-backs and progress it. He is excellent in his ball retention and his composure in tight spaces, but does he have the physicality to do that in the Premier League? And when you play him alongside either Kobbie Mainoo or Ugarte, that might be a lack of physicality. So that opens the door to another suggestion. Angelo Stieler, who is, of course, rocking it at Stuttgart right now, former Bayern Munich, 23 years old. You know, we talked about him in last week's show, didn't we, about some of the best defensive midfielders in Europe, young defensive midfielders in Europe this season. He's certainly a contender alongside the likes of Pavlovic. His numbers are absolutely ridiculous for a player of his age playing in the role he does for Stuttgart. He's putting up over 8 progressive passes per 90. Not to be sniffed at, man. That's in the top 10% of European midfielders. He wants the ball. He's very calm and composed under pressure. He's more physical than Angel Gomez and probably gettable for Manchester United. Like, Stuttgart crushing it under Hoeneß in the Champions League this season. Even though their league position isn't as good, their underlying numbers, even this season, are sort of third or fourth best in the Bundesliga. I don't think we're talking about 60, 70 million pounds here like we would be for a Wharton or a Baleba, despite the fact he might well be as good, if not better. For me, Angelo Stiller has to be the option. A player that wants to take it in the first phase, but is also physical enough off the ball, could accompany either Ugarte or Mainu, rotate for either of those roles. Into the attacking midfield areas we go. Let's be realistic here, guys. Like, Xavi Simons is not going to want to come to Manchester United. Like, that for me is just... it's not going to happen. You know, Davies really should have been in the red there as well. I just don't believe he is going to want to come to Manchester United. Xavi Simons is under contract until, 2027 at PSG. I know there was heavy interest, and obviously he would be extremely exciting in that front three as a dynamic 10 wide man under Ruben Amorim, who wants the ball in tight spaces. His numbers are still ridiculous. Like, what was it? 19 goal involvements last season. Still continues to look an all-round beast, despite the fact he's picked up that ankle ligament injury. I'm sure he's going to come back fit and firing, but I think it's unrealistic. Is Eberechi Eze more realistic? Of course, he does have a release clause that apparently becomes active at about £60 million. I think given his age, the way Ineos have recruited recently, he's less likely, although he is a guarantee. I really feel like whoever signs Eberechi Eze is getting a nailed-on star. Like, you know what you're going to get from an output level. I don't see what he's done at Palace, him not being able to replicate at another club. It almost feels sort of that Jack Grealish mould where you're like, yeah, he's just a star. Like, such a good player, such a good personality as well. I think somebody needs to take a punt on Eze. Do I think it's going to be United? No. And I think part of the reason for that is in that area, you've got Mount, you've got Bruno, who signed a new contract. You've got Ahmad, who can play a little bit inside as well. You've got Shea Lacey coming through the academy. I don't think United need to sign an attacking midfielder this summer or this January. For me, this is one of the least prioritised positions. So, although Chris Rigg is highly rated at 17 years old, is it worth spending the £30 million it's going to take him to get out of Sunderland? Maybe, because he is that good, isn't he? Like, 17 years old doing what he's doing in the Championship right now. I'm not saying it's Jude Bellingham levels, but you can see why people are talking about him as being the next superstar to come out of the Championship. So, you know, if you could convince him, sure, that would be cool, but I think it's a low-level priority. But what about strikers? Is that a big priority? Well, some of the names on this list are huge-level stars. Gyokeres, first and foremost, has worked with Ruben Amorim over the last 12 months to a freakish level. Now, I did see some people online on Twitter sort of talking about how Amorim has made Gyokeres in the Championship at Coventry. Let's give him his flowers. You know, an all-round creative, goal-scoring beast. It's not like he just went to Sporting and then was suddenly a star. Like, he was amazing in England as well. So I can see on the surface of it why he's being linked. But at €100 million, it ain't happening. United have got Højlund. They've just bought Xerxes in. They really believe as a club that Chido Bobby Martins is going to be an absolute superstar. Like, we talk about academy talents. When you speak to anyone at the club, it's hard to describe how highly they rate this guy. And they truly believe that, if not this season, next season, there will be first team minutes in abundance for him. So whether or not they want to block that pathway with a €100 million striker, I'm a little bit unconvinced about. The same could be said for Victor Boniface. You know, we know he is absolutely unbelievable. I think there are legitimate arguments to be made that maybe he is actually the best Nigerian striker on the planet right now, not Victor Osimhen, despite the fact Osimhen gets all of the hype. But how much are Bayer Leverkusen going to want for him? You know, strikers on this market, the values are eye-watering, man. Like, eye-watering. Much more than midfielders, defenders, fullbacks, goalkeepers. The striking market is crazy. And Boniface's price tag, I think, would prove well problematic for United. So could that free up a player like Jonathan David, who is out of contract in the summer, which, again, not to bring it back to budget, must appeal to Manchester United. A player that is still just 24 years old, so not over the hill either, and is put up throughout his Liga and career XG that dwarfs either Rasmus Højlund or Joshua Xerxes. His shot numbers dwarf either Joshua Zirkzee or Rasmus Højlund. His goal scoring output has been incredible since he arrived in the professional game. He's never once dipped below double figures. He'll do it again this season. 6 goals in 6 starts this campaign. It was 19 last season, 24 the season before that. Is it just worth having Jonathan David on your books? Even if it doesn't work, you've not paid a big fee. I don't think he would demand massive wages. Would not be the worst option. Doesn't feel like it would block the pathway of a player like Chidorby Martins or Rasmus Højlund in the same way €100 million Victor Gyokeres or €100 million Victor Boniface would. So I'm actually going to put like a yellow, I think, on Jonathan David. Don't think he would be one of my 3 key signings. Those would go to Jared Branthwaite, Ryan Ait-Nouri and Angelo Stieler. But if you could get him on a free and he comes in as a rotational striker, pretty reliable numbers. But what do you guys at home think? Which 3 players should Ruben Amorim focus on signing either in January or next summer? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, hit the like button, hit subscribe. I'll see you later. Bye-bye.